tired of being broke all the time. There has to be something better.
An older woman
Who could?
take care of you.
Yeah, that wouldn't be so bad.
It could solve all of our problems.
Making it with a woman.
How hard can it be?
That's just about it, Miss Miller.
Oh, thank you so much, Bailey. I really appreciate it. You're doing a great job.
Really?
Yes, and the clients are really noticing you.
Scene 4 unfolds as a quiet, carefully modulated study of recognition, power, and emotional invitation, presenting the relationship between Melissa and Presley as one rooted not in spectacle but in the slow accumulation of trust, attention, and mutual regard. And what immediately distinguishes this scene within the anthology is its focus on everyday labor and professional validation as the starting point for intimacy, reminding viewers that for many women, especially queer women, desire often emerges in spaces shaped by work, responsibility, and the need to prove oneself competent and worthy. The opening exchange, centered on praise for Presley's diligence and politeness, establishes a dynamic in which affirmation carries real weight, particularly for a younger woman navigating economic precarity and the unspoken expectation to be grateful for opportunity. Melissa's acknowledgement of Presley's contributions is framed as sincere rather than transactional. Yet the scene remains attentive to the asymmetry of power that accompanies praise delivered from employer to employee, mentor to novice, a dynamic familiar within queer communities where professional spaces sometimes become the only environments in which intergenerational connection feels possible or safe. The mention of a bonus, and the invitation to celebrate privately, introduces an ethical tension that the film does not ignore, instead allowing the audience to sit with the ambiguity of generosity that exists alongside authority, and the ways in which material support can blur into emotional significance without either being inherently corrupt. When Presley enters Melissa's home, the setting itself becomes symbolic, representing access not just to comfort or success but to a future that feels newly imaginable, and Presley's awe at the space reflects a broader longing for stability, recognition, and belonging that transcends romantic desire. Melissa's language about teamwork and appreciation reinforces the idea of partnership, subtly reframing their connection as collaborative rather than hierarchical, while still acknowledging the reality of experience and age difference. The scene carefully balances admiration with restraint, as Melissa offers encouragement about Presley's future and professional growth, positioning herself as someone who sees potential and wants to nurture it, a role that resonates deeply within queer narratives, where mentorship often becomes a conduit for deeper emotional awareness. Presley's gratitude is portrayed as earnest and vulnerable, underscoring how rare it can be for young women to feel truly seen within systems that often extract labor without offering affirmation. The exchange about youth and beauty is handled with notable care, avoiding objectification and instead emphasizing continuity across life stages, suggesting that desire and self-worth do not expire with age but evolve, a message particularly meaningful for lesbian viewers accustomed to cultural narratives that erase older women's sexuality altogether. The shared drink and conversation function less as seduction than as a ritual of slowing down, creating space for presence and attention in a world that often demands constant productivity from women. Melissa's suggestion that they simply enjoy each other's company signals a shift away from outcomes and toward experience, aligning with the film's broader resistance to instrumentalizing intimacy. When the conversation turns toward relationships, the scene becomes a meditation on language itself, illustrating how indirect and cautious women often must be when naming desire, especially across lines of authority. Melissa's clarification that she does not mean a boyfriend gently disrupts heteronormative assumptions without dramatizing them, modeling a form of inquiry that is curious rather than invasive. Presley's confusion and hesitation reflect the real-world uncertainty many queer women feel when confronted with the possibility of being seen, particularly by someone whose opinion carries professional weight. The moment in which Melissa names Presley's attraction to women is framed not as accusation but as recognition, grounded in observation and presence, highlighting how queer understanding often arises through subtle attunement rather than explicit disclosure. This recognition is mutual, as Presley's acknowledgement confirms what has been sensed but not spoken. and the scene treats this exchange as an act of courage on both sides. Melissa's admission that she still has desires, and her reflection on what it means to fulfill them, challenges cultural narratives that confine women's longing to youth or novelty, instead presenting desire as an ongoing reflective process shaped by experience, loss, and self-knowledge. The use of respectful address and measured tone reinforces the scene's commitment to consent and ethical awareness, ensuring that intimacy emerges through dialogue rather than assumption. For lesbian and queer women, this scene resonates as a portrayal of how admiration and aspiration can mask deeper feelings in socially acceptable ways, particularly in environments where direct expression might feel risky or inappropriate. The careful pacing mirrors the internal negotiation many women undertake as they weigh authenticity against safety, desire against professionalism, and longing against the fear of misinterpretation. At the same time, the scene speaks to women more broadly by addressing the emotional labor involved in being agreeable, hardworking, and quietly hopeful, and the exhaustion that can accompany always waiting for permission to want more. Melissa's role can be read as symbolic of an older generation of queer women, who learn to survive through discretion and compromise, while Presley embodies a younger generation, still learning how to articulate desire without apology, and their interaction becomes a bridge between these experiences rather than a collision. The film resists framing their connection as transgressive, instead insisting on its emotional legitimacy while remaining attentive to boundaries, illustrating how ethical intimacy requires awareness rather than denial of power dynamics. By centering conversation, acknowledgement, and mutual respect, the scene critiques a culture that is uncomfortable with women expressing affection for one another unless it can be trivialized or sensationalized. Instead, it offers a vision of connection rooted in care, patience, and shared recognition, affirming that women's love for women can be serious, grounded, and meaningful without needing to justify itself through spectacle. This approach challenges both erasure and fetishization, asserting that lesbian intimacy deserves the same narrative dignity as any other form of love. The scene's emphasis on gratitude, mentorship, and quiet possibility reflects the ways queer women often build chosen family within the cracks of existing systems, finding connection where they can, and negotiating meaning with care. Ultimately, Scene 4 contributes to the anthology's larger argument that visibility is not always loud or confrontational, but often emerges through moments of being truly seen and responded to with respect. By portraying intimacy as an exchange of recognition rather than conquest, the film honors the complexity of women's interior lives and the resilience required to pursue authenticity in a world that still struggles to fully acknowledge women's love for women, offering viewers not fantasy but recognition, and not provocation but truth.